Hello and welcome back to Lead at Any Level Live. My name is Amy C. Wanninger, the Inclusion Catalyst. I am also the founder and CEO of Lead at Any Level. I am so excited to be with you actually live today. My schedule has been a little bit crazy the last couple months, and some of these have been live and some have been pre-recorded and live streamed. So hopefully you couldn't tell the difference, and I'm sorry if that feels feels a little shady. I don't mean to be that way. But I am so glad to be with you today. Today, I want to talk with you about something that is very important and something that comes up a lot when I'm working with clients or talking to potential clients, or even when I'm out, speaking at conferences or speaking at events. It's a question that comes up a lot. And so real quick in the chat, I would love it, love, if you would just let me know where you're watching from, what platform you're on, and what brought you here today. I'm really excited to talk to you, and I hope to be able to say hello in just a moment when I click over to the comments section. So let's talk about this important topic. The important topic today is, where do we find diverse talent? This is the question that I get so often. And I want to explain how I answer this question, because I don't necessarily give you a direct answer if you ask me this. There's so many other questions that I feel like people need to answer first, kind of the questions behind the questions about why is it a problem for you in the first place, that you're asking me. So again, the question is, for those just joining, where do we find diverse talent? And here's what I'm going to tell you, if that is a question that's come up for you before. The first thing I want you to know is you need to be clear about what you mean by quote unquote diverse talent. Why? Well, it's important. It's just like if you were to say, we want to sell our product to people. Okay, which people? Who needs your product? What does that mean? It's hard to find people if you don't know who you're looking for. And I'll give you a very clear example of this. I was speaking at an event a few years ago. This was pre-COVID. I was in the Midwest. I was speaking to an insurance group, property and casualty insurance industry. They had brought me in to keynote for their conference. And somebody came up to me and said, we would really like to have more diverse talent here in this city in the insurance industry. And I said, tell me what that means. And they said, well, everybody that works in this industry in this city is pretty much the same. And I said, well, I don't understand what you mean by that. Let me give you my perspective. I said, I've been talking to the folks in the audience this morning before the event started, and I found people who have been in the industry for 30 years and people who just started, a couple months ago. I've talked to people who work in underwriting and people who work in actuary and people who work in agency. I've talked to people who work in customer support in entry-level roles, and I've talked to somebody who's a vice president at a major carrier. You've got people, working in claims roles. You've got people working in direct-to-consumer roles. You've got people who are in IT. So I talked to 3 or 4 people this morning who appeared to me to be African American. I talked to 3 or 4 people who appeared to me to be Asian. I talked to several people who were white. I've talked to a lot of women, a lot of men. I've talked to people who are married and who are single. I've talked to people who are caregivers, people who are parents of young children. I've talked to people who are single. I've talked to people who are older, people who are younger. What do you mean this industry isn't diverse in this city? And what they meant was it's overwhelmingly white. And they were looking for talent from, Black communities, from Latino and Latina communities, from basically ethnic minority communities in that area. And I said, well, then you need to say that specifically, because people don't know you're looking for them if you don't speak their identity, right? You don't speak to who they are. And you also need to know who you're looking for so you know where to look for them. So the very first thing you need to decide if you're looking for quote unquote diverse talent is, what does that mean? Are there target populations that you really want to invite into your industry or into your company? And if so, be very explicit about that, because that's how you're going to find them, is by knowing who they are. Now that's step one. The next thing I would tell you is understand who already feels included and who doesn't. Whether you're hiring into your industry or into your company, or you're looking for members for your association, Knowing who feels included and who doesn't and why is really important, because even if you are able to attract in the talent that you want, even if you're able to attract in people from diverse backgrounds, if you can't keep them, all that money you've spent on marketing, all of that money that you've spent on talent acquisition, or your employer brand, if you can't keep that person that you brought in or those people that you brought in, they're likely not going to stay, and you've just wasted your money. So make sure that you understand who feels included, who doesn't, and why. And the reason, and hello, LinkedIn user from PDX, which I believe is Phoenix. Welcome, and I'm so glad you're here. Let me know if any of this is resonating with you. And if you're new to the stream, please let me know in the comments where you're from and where you're watching. So once you understand who feels included, who doesn't, and why, now you can take the next step, which is to remove some of the barriers to inclusion that might exist. So if you notice that certain demographics or certain people in your organization or your industry don't feel included, talk to them. Go find out why. What are those barriers that they're facing? And how can you eliminate some of those barriers so they feel more comfortable there? Because here's what's going to happen. If, let's say, you are trying to be more inclusive of people in your company who are native Spanish speakers, English is their second language, they're native Spanish speakers. If you're trying to be more inclusive of that particular employee population, and you find out that none of your job postings are ever posted in Spanish, well, now you know that that's a barrier to inclusion, because there's very likely somebody looking for a job posting in Spanish to let them know, right, that their language is welcome, that their English as a second language status is welcome. And I'm really sorry, my dog is crying. I hope you can't hear that in the background. You probably can. And I can't leave because this is a live stream. So we're just going to have to push through, and my poor dog's just going to have to feel like he's alone for a minute. Sorry, Domino. All right. So now that you, number one, know what you mean by diverse talent. Number two, understand who feels included, who doesn't, and why. And number three, you've talked to them and you started removing some of the barriers to inclusion. Now you're ready to actually start looking for whatever you mean by diverse talent. And let me explain why it's important. This is all going to come together here at the end. The reason this is important is because you want to go fishing in the right pond. So I'm from the Midwest. I come from people who fish and people who hunt. And I will tell you that if you are fishing in a stocked lake and you are fishing for bluegill and there have been bluegill stocked in that lake, you are going to catch bluegill. You probably won't even have to work that hard or wait very long for it. But if you are fishing in a lake that is stocked with bluegill and crappie and bass, and you are fishing for salmon, you are never going to catch a salmon, no matter how long you stand there, no matter what kind of bait you use, no matter what kind of rod, reel, net, or other apparatus you use. You're never going to catch a salmon because there are no salmon in that lake. Okay. And so what I need you to understand, if you're looking for diverse talent, whatever diversity means in this context for you, is when you know who you're looking for, now you can go find them, because chances are they are gathering somewhere already without you. And so they don't know you exist until you go looking for them. And once you go looking for them where they already are, now they're going to know that they feel welcome. So let me give you an example of this. I'm interviewing later this week on my podcast. I'm interviewing Shakima Jackson Martinez from Answer Lab. And she talks about this, how they found in their tech company, and they're, looking for tech talent. They were specifically looking for Black tech talent. And so they went out and looked for talent in the places where folks were gathering. So they went to the meetups of Black technical professionals, the meetups of Black marketing professionals, so they could find the right people to target their job postings, their job ads to, so they could actually intentionally bring people into their organization. And you can do the same thing, just like the example I gave earlier. If you're looking for people who are bilingual, for whom Spanish is their first language, posting an ad in Spanish and putting it out. Let's say you're in the insurance industry, posting a Spanish language job posting with the Latinos in Insurance Association, LIA. I forget exactly what the acronym stands for, but the Latinos in Insurance Association, if you post that ad with them in Spanish, those folks are going to know because they're already there. Number one, that the job's posted, but number two, that you really do mean to include them. And that makes a huge difference. I know a lot of companies, especially outside the US, gender equity is a big concern. So if you're looking for, let's say you're looking for women executives, and you want to make sure that you're bringing in executives, people from the executive ranks into your organization who are women, go where those women are already gathering. Go to the women's events that specifically target women executives, for example. So it's all about, who do you want to include specifically? How do you ensure that they feel included? How do you knock down any barriers to making that happen? And then finally, go where they are and invite them in. This isn't rocket science, but it's just requires of us a different way of thinking than we're probably used to thinking about our talent. And so if you're really, wanting to bring in a wide variety of talent into your industry or into your company, think about who's missing, why they might be missing, and where you might go find them. That's it. It's really not that hard. And I've probably just saved you thousands and thousands of dollars in consulting if you can just implement those basic steps. So hopefully this was helpful for you. If this was helpful, if you are an executive or any kind of leader looking to build a more inclusive culture in your workplace, please join me here every Monday at noon Eastern, or almost every Monday at noon Eastern. Sometimes I'm traveling and I don't make it, but I try to always be here. I'm going to ask too that you join me every day, every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here. I will be posting leader tips. It's a very quick, under 3 minutes, always under 3 minutes, usually under 2 minute videos on just really quick tips for people who want to lead inclusively at any level of their organization. And on Thursday, as I mentioned, you'll want to come by for Including You. This is my new video and audio podcast. Drops every Thursday at noon Eastern right here. And as a video, and then on Friday it'll be released through Living Corporate as an audio podcast. So if you're not subscribed to Living Corporate, wherever you get your podcast, you'll want to go do that, so you'll be sure to catch every episode of Including You. This week I'll be talking to Shakima Jackson Martinez. She is the I believe Chief Diversity Officer, I may be getting her title wrong, at Answer Lab, but we're talking about talent acquisition this week and why this was so important to Answer Lab and how they got through some of the hurdles of getting diverse talent through their talent pipeline and into their organization. And they used metrics to do this. It's a fascinating conversation. You will not want to miss it. So join me this week and every Thursday at noon Eastern for that. And with that, I look forward to seeing you next week on Monday at noon Eastern for another edition of Lead at Any Level Live. If this is something that your organization would like some help with, be sure to schedule your free, no obligation introductory consultation with me at workwithlaal.com. It's right here, workwithlaal.com. And that'll get you on my calendar. We can talk about what are the challenges you've faced in the past, what have you tried, and what would great look like, so that we can get you on the path to great. I look forward to seeing you on my calendar, on my social media feed, in the comments, wherever you are. And thank you all so much for joining me today.